understand what is happening and to clarify any information you've heard. My name is Daniel Vicente, and I'm a field deputy for the Office of Supervisor Lindsay Horvath, and I have the pleasure of working here in our Calabasas office. I want to thank the residents, community leaders, elected officials, and various stakeholders for joining us here tonight. I also want to acknowledge the pain and loss that have taken place in the last month. The Palisades fire has devastated many of our communities. Nearly everyone knows someone who has been affected by this disaster, and our hearts and prayers go out to all of those who lost homes, businesses, and their lives. In the same time, we have also seen such devastation. We've also seen the best of humanity rising up to help and pitch into the recovery in ways that have been so uplifting. I want to first start by thanking our first responders, including our partners at the LA County Fire Department and the Lost Hill Sheriff Station, for all of their incredible work this past month. We know it hasn't been easy, and your dedication to service is inspiring. Thank you for keeping us all safe. Our office has been working with various state, federal, and local entities to get information out to our residents every single day. So if you haven't already, please sign up for our newsletter at lindsayhorvath.lacounty.gov. We have a full evening planned for you tonight, so I want to get things started. Tonight, we're joined by various representatives who are overseeing and coordinating these the cleanup and disposal efforts. I'm going to begin by introducing them one by one and asking them to give a very quick overview of what their role in this cleanup is. We're going to start with Director Mark Pastrella, Director of Los Angeles County Public Works. Director.
Good evening, and again, I want to echo the words that were spoken at the beginning here, and that my heart goes out to everyone who's suffered this loss, and just the community of Los Angeles County. The impacts are far and wide. If you aren't someone who was directly impacted, you know someone who has, and of course, the community of Calabasas has been impacted by many incidents like this and been through it, whether it was a Woolsey fire or all the way back to '93. I can remember being involved in our fires in this community. I worked the area for many years, as you know, and many of you know me as the original building official up there, or not original, but the building official up there for some time for the county. And nowadays I'm acting as the Director of Public Works, representing the County Board of Supervisors and all the business areas that we operate. One of the areas that our department operates within is the solid waste management for LA County. And this is how Public Works has come to be involved in the program that we're going to talk about today, the debris removal program. And in that program, the U.S. EPA and U.S. Army Corps of Engineers are leading the debris removal efforts. There's two phases to it. Phase one, hazardous material removal, and you'll hear more about that tonight from the Corps and EPA. And then phase two, the debris removal program, the actual ash and fire materials that U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is removing. We're happy to have these federal partners working with LA County Public Works. Our role in the program is to certify that the properties are ownership through the ROE program, and that our program will again certify ownership and protect the rights of individual property owners as they are giving permission for the Army Corps of Engineers to enter upon their property. We'll also be logging the program and making sure that we meet our mission, which is to remove all of the debris from properties that have been impacted by these two significant fires safely and quickly from properties so that we can get back to rebuilding the communities of the Eaton fire as well as the Palisades fire. For more information about the program, you can go to recovery.lacounty.gov.
Thank you so much, Director. Next, we're going to go to Gwen Tontoko from the Los Angeles County Sanitation District. Gwen?
Hi, everyone. My name is Gwen Tontoko with the LA County Sanitation Districts. So my role in this, I am the site engineer out at Calabasas landfill. And again, same thing, echoing that this was such a devastating event that with the two fires happening. So we're happy to do what we can to assist in this program. The landfill itself is owned by LA County. The sanitation districts operates and maintains the site under a joint powers agreement. So my role is essentially just to assist with the operations of the landfill, accepting the waste as the end receiver.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Gwen. Next, we're going to head to Colonel Saucer. Colonel.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. My name is Colonel Brian Saucer, and I'm the commander of the Emergency Field Office for the Palisades Fire and the response from the Corps at this location. Just real briefly, from the President's declaration as a natural disaster and the recovery efforts, FEMA is the federal coordinating agency for all federal assistance provided to the state of California. Under that umbrella, the Corps of Engineers has been asked to come in to serve under the direction of FEMA, working in collaboration with state and local authorities in the debris removal so elected by the public. So you're going to see, and we're going to have a discussion today about what that entails, but real briefly, that is my responsibility out here, is to oversee the Palisades fire response for debris removal. You get a twofer here tonight. Also joining me today is Colonel Eric Swenson. He's the overall commander for the response of the Corps for both fires, overseeing both Eaton and Palisades. I'd just like to say that certainly the thoughts and prayers from the Corps of Engineers go out to everyone involved. Not being native to Southern California, I certainly have gained an appreciation not only for the size of LA County, but I think more importantly that this is a woven together group of tight-knit communities. And certainly Calabasas is one of those communities, although not directly impacted, certainly affected. And certainly appreciate everyone's understanding as we have this discussion today, and look forward to your questions tonight and being able to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right, so we're going to head into Q&A now. We know that there are lots of questions that folks have, so we want to make sure to get to that as quick as possible. First question that we have is going to be, can you explain the difference between hazardous and toxic debris versus disaster-related debris, and can you give examples? And for that, we'll go to you, Director.
Let's see. I'm actually going to turn that question over to the Army Corps of Engineers, to Colonel Swazzer, as he's expert on this, along with EPA.
Yeah, so I don't know if we have the Environmental Protection Agency here with us tonight. I'll certainly ask them to fill in any gaps. So what you're hearing a lot about the news is household hazardous materials. And those materials are what you typically find at a household underneath the kitchen sink, in the garage, on the back deck with a barbecue grill. So these are going to be some sort of tanks that contain gas. They can be aerosol cans for spray paint. They can be paint buckets. There's also this includes lithium batteries for EVs and charging stations. These particular materials are part of what we call phase one. And the Environmental Protection Agency has gone through and has commenced this month with the largest mobilization for a recovery of these type of materials that we've ever had in a natural disaster. And they're in the field right now in these impacted areas. And they go through and they essentially hand select these materials and grab these materials from the impacted areas, and they bag those materials and they safely transport those materials to brief consolidation areas whereby those materials are quickly consolidated and moved into appropriate waste streams from the impacted areas. That's what's occurring right now in phase one. Separate and distinct from phase one-like activities is what the Corps has been tasked to perform, and that is the rest of the debris that you see at an impacted location. So that's going to be the fire ash debris that is most visible to most folks as they drive by. That might be partially destroyed walls and chimneys and foundations. Collectively, those type of materials are going to be collected by the Corps to include green waste and affected trees within the footprint. As it qualifies for what we call the private property debris removal program, those items, if the owner elects to opt into the program, will be collected by the Corps of Engineers. Now that constitutes multiple waste streams, and those waste streams will go to the appropriate receiving facilities. And that's part of the discussion that we have here tonight. I would say holistically for both fire footprints, facilities throughout Southern California have been designated and are going to be utilized in this response to this disaster. And the Corps has worked with local, state, and federal authorities on where are the appropriate facilities, where are they located. And so hand in hand with LA County Public Works, Mr. Pastrella and his team, all of these agencies, Caltrans, Cal Recycle, local, state, municipalities, we've come together over the past really few weeks to find where those facilities are and how to best utilize them and what are the appropriate waste streams that are certified and the appropriate transport methods to take those waste streams to those locations. We've been working on that over the past couple of weeks, and that partnership is proven to be absolutely fundamental to how we're going to perform this mission. So I hope that answers the question. I'd be absolutely able to answer any additional questions based on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel. And I will add, as the representative of the owner of the landfill, LA County owns the landfill, as was stated, by County San, our partner and operator. It's important to know that Calabasas landfill is a Class 3 facility. It's designated to safely accept disaster-related waste, which is burned residential debris, after the hazardous material removal. So we aren't accepting, or we are not, as a county-owned facility, accepting household hazardous materials as a part of the debris removal.
Thank you, Director. And I actually think you answered part of our next question, but if there's anything else you'd like to add to this, it's why was the Calabasas landfill chosen and why not somewhere more remote?
So that's also, Colonel can speak to that as we do our advanced planning with the Army Corps and their contractor. And I think the Colonel just answered it, actually. We have actually identified 17 locations. One of the things that makes Calabasas ideal and is its proximity to the fire area, Palisades particularly. It gives us the opportunity to move the material quickly to a location and return back for loading. So it is one of the choices that the Corps has made out of 17 or more facilities. As I said, a Class 3 facility, only accepting disaster-related waste, that being burned residential debris.
Yeah, and I think it's important. I appreciate that, Director. Thank you for that clarification on Calabasas. It's also important to note that this is approximately 4.5 million tons of debris, but it's roughly equally distributed between the two fires, and the Eaton fire will not be utilizing Calabasas. So you have a significant portion, if not majority, of the waste stream not coming to Calabasas from the Eaton fire. Calabasas is in the proximity of the Palisades fire, but we're also looking at 3 other locations specifically for fire ash debris. In and amongst those other waste streams, metal recyclables, crushed concrete, household hazardous materials, those items are not going to Calabasas. Those are going to other facilities within the Southern California area.
Thank you so much. Our next question here is, what is the process of transporting the debris and entering the landfill? And I think that's going to go to you as well, Colonel.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question and thank you, because this is important. I'd like to rewind the tape a little bit here. The Corps has, unfortunately, been a part of a response to many wildfire and debris recovery missions, debris removal missions, not only outside the state of California, but also inside the state of California. And over that period of time, I would say the procedures have been refined to a point now where we have absolutely minimized the risk associated with the transport of said materials. So in particular for fire ash debris, which is what is being looked at for Calabasas, there may be some green waste, think associated shrubbery and woods and trees, that will be going to Calabasas. But for the fire ash debris, which I think is going to be most people's concern, the procedures are that when we go to a site, there's a lot that's going on at that site, and I'm not going to review all of it. But for the folks in Calabasas, what is done first is we utilize what's called the wet method. So the first thing that, before we are removing any debris, it is going to be saturated with water. It's going to be saturated with water to weight the material, and then also prevent, obviously, that material from entering the air as in particles. So we weight it with water, and then it gets moved into the transport vehicle, in this case, a dump truck. But that dump truck is lined. It's lined with 10 mil plastic, which is a very, very heavy plastic that is utilized in the bed of the dump truck. And then it is encapsulated, wrapped, if you will, once the load is complete. And there's also a secondary covering for those dump trucks as well during movement. So quite a lot of procedures are done to consolidate the waste, to weight the waste, prevent movement into the air, and then encapsulate the waste during transport. Upon receipt to the Calabasas landfill, then we follow all the procedures that are currently in place by the sanitation division for receipt of any materials to that facility. So those procedures are exactly going to be followed as they are currently for any waste streams entering that facility. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Gwen, do you have anything you'd like to add to that, or does that, or
Yeah, and like you said, you know, it's moist already when it leaves. When it does receive, when we do receive it at our site, we will as also once we, if it gets offloaded, if we will also be spraying it down with a little, we have dust control trucks that go around and will spray as well. So that will help to contain the ash from flying off into the air and become airborne. At the very end of the day, we do cover each load or the entire refuse space with dirt cover. So that will prevent overnight, you know, vectors from coming in, picking up pieces of trash or ash or any ash from getting airborne.
thank you so much. Our next question is going to be for Dr. Davis with the LA County Department of Public Health. And the question is, what are the public health concerns associated with this type of debris?
Appreciate the question. Thank you. As has been mentioned, fire debris can contain, hazardous chemicals, as household hazardous chemicals, as just was mentioned by Mr. Saucer. It could be metals and other materials like asbestos from burned buildings and items that were in the property when it did burn. These can cause problems, as we know, which is why we're talking about reducing things becoming airborne. If you breathe that in, it could irritate your breathing. If it's on your skin, it can irritate your skin. And potentially have some long-term health impacts if exposed to a high level. And so a lot of the things that are being done are trying to reduce that risk of exposure. The guidance that's been put out is try to reduce that as well. But it's also why there has been an order put in place for proper cleanup and why the EPA, who have trained folks who are trained to deal with these materials and safely remove, handle, and transport them, are in place to do just that, as well as the Army Corps in terms of dealing with what it's doing as well, with all the measures to be put in place in order to reduce that risk to the immediate area and the surrounding areas along the path, as well as where there's staging, EPA staging to get things into the proper containers and off to the ultimate site.
Thank you so much for that. I do want to ask a follow-up question. What are the long-term impacts in the landfills that we see from this kind of debris?
Is that for me, or you're asking
And
in
that
terms
one,
of
I'm
landfill?
gonna direct that one to Gwen, actually.
Long-term impacts. Are you talking about health impacts or I'm not quite certain your question.
Yes, we're with regard to public health, yes. So
Okay.
that would be Dr. Davis. So with regard to the long-term impacts in the landfills, do you have any concerns there, or?
Well, as mentioned, in terms of landfill, so there's it sounds like there's two questions. So I think someone may be asking the question, what happens to the landfill itself as these materials are in there, and over time, what happens to them? That question I can't answer, but in general, landfills are operating with some safety measures that are both to help in terms of any off-gassing and cleaning that off in terms of materials that are in there, as well as things to monitor the air quality, temperatures, et cetera, in order to ensure that the landfill is not operating in a way that we're having some side effects from it that would impact the community. So that's the best I can give you in terms of that. But landfills were designed even before this to have things in order to monitor operations to mitigate the impact to the community.
And I can add to that a little bit. So first of all, one of the reasons why Calabasas landfill is able to accept this material is because we do have a composite liner. So prior to any refuse being placed into our landfill, we did construct what we call a composite liner. Underneath that protects our groundwater. It's just several layers of different like there's a clay liner at the bottom, and then we have several different layers of geomembrane and very thick plastics and things like that. On top of that composite liner, we have a system of piping, what we call our leachate collection and removal system, which is essentially perforated piping that collects any liquids that percolate through the trash. We collect that. So that composite liner with the leachate collection system is protecting our groundwater. So we don't want any of the liquids to impact the groundwater. As far as the air quality monitoring and things like that, we are heavily regulated by AQMD. We do have a lot of, we have our gas collection system that we have a vacuum placed on the landfill. We have a system of gas collection trenches and wells to collect any gas that is produced through the degradation of gas, or excuse me, degradation of trash, like Dr. Davis was saying. And then we also do a lot of monitoring to ensure that none of the gas or methane is escaping the landfill, collecting everything.
Thank
So
you so
essentially,
much.
we're heavily engineered so that we're protecting the public health and environment.
Understood. Thank you. What safety measures are in place for the adjacent community, and what communication has taken place with those residents? I'll direct that to Colonel Saucer and to Director Pastrella.
Yeah, so obviously I appreciate the question. Certainly the proximity of the community does matter. I think that our collaboration with local and state authorities, to include the municipality of Calabasas, are absolutely critical. I've had the opportunity over the past few days to collaborate with some officials from Calabasas and walk through the specifics on how this material be moved, and certainly our collaboration with public health officials as well. Everything that we do will be transparent, and we will communicate. We oversee a series of contractors performing this work. So from a oversight perspective, the Corps of Engineer is standing back, not having a financial vested interest. We have only our interest is the removal of the debris in a safe manner, maintain public health and safety at all times. That's a complete function of the Corps of Engineers. We maintain the contract, and we act in the interest of the public, overseeing the private contractors. So, we follow those protocols for all the affected communities, to include Calabasas that will be receiving some of this material.
Thank you, Colonel. Yeah, so this is Mark, and the community's trust is the utmost thing that we build at our department and in the County of Los Angeles. And this is, thank you for the opportunity in this meeting to hear from the community and opportunity to build that trust. Now, LA County has been here for a long time, and myself personally even engaged in the Calabasas area for a long time. So originally reaching out was at a strategic relations level with the amount of work we've been doing and the unplanned event that occurred. We have definitely been, I personally have definitely been engaged across the county at an enterprise level, as you can imagine, talking to media, but also talking to groups like yourselves. And I think I see tonight as like one of the more intimate, and it's not as intimate that I like to be. I'd like to get some, in-person stuff going too with you all. But you have our absolute, commitment to telling you what we know when we know it. And I think for me, tonight is the first night I've had like a large group in Calabasas to talk to you about it. The identification of landfills started somewhere in week 2 or 3 of this event as we were going through the fires, and we didn't have Corps on board yet. So, it's been pretty rapid to get to you, but I'm sure it doesn't feel like way, especially with what we're about to propose to do. So again, this is the opportunity for us to build trust with you, to regain and make sure that you get all your questions answered tonight and in future meetings.
Thank you, Director. Apologies, I was having issues with my microphone. What routes will the trucks be taking from the cleanup area to the landfill? And that's for you, Colonel Saucer.
Yeah, I appreciate that question. So, in addition to our discussion on landfills with state and local authorities, we're trying to get out of residential streets as much as humanly possible. So we minimize any traffic on residential streets, typically only from the impacted area to the point of receipt at a landfill. And so you're looking at, there's several different routes. I won't walk through them each, but we will utilize the primary routes to Calabasas. So you'd be looking at we're going to be on state and federal roads for the most part to get there. And we absolutely minimize any traffic on residential streets to the point of none at all if we can avoid them. And so we've done those routes all the way to the facility from the point of origin. There's another topic on there if I could, and I'm happy to circle back on this one because there's an important question I see in your Q&A that I'll just go ahead and throw out there now. Some folks have concerns about asbestos, and I should have addressed that at the beginning of my comments. So as part of our site assessments, in addition to the work that the EPA is doing, we chip test the entire site for asbestos. And knowing about the year of construction of the homes, we have a pretty good idea if there is any asbestos of where that asbestos would be located based on prior fires. And so we chip test the entire site and pay specific attention to those areas which may historically have asbestos. And then when we chip test those asbestos sites, if it comes up with any asbestos, then we perform an abatement on the site in accordance to all federal and state standards on that abatement of that asbestos. And then asbestos materials are not going to Calabasas. They are separated in the waste streams and they go to a different location, which has already been certified by the state of California to receive asbestos containing materials, ACM. And that is a different waste stream that is not going to Calabasas. So I'm looking through the Q&A. I know we're not going to get through them all today, but I think that's an important question to address. And I hope I addressed the route questions sufficiently. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to circle back, will there be any type of air or debris testing being done, and are there inspectors? And that'll be for Glenn and Dr. Davis.
Well, as far as our site is concerned, we do have a hazardous waste technician. We are increasing the number of inspectors to 3. We typically have just 1 inspector on site. So during this, when we start receiving the fire debris, we will increase it to 3 inspectors. They will always have eyes on the refuse that's coming in and observing to ensure that there's nothing that they can at least observe or detect that's hazardous. If they do, then they will pull it aside. If they can see it from a particular driver, they will be writing them up and taking note of their license plate and all their information. So we will have increased inspections.
As I understand, I'm assuming this is talking about testing of the debris. The EPA is trained to identify and sort and properly handle and route for proper disposal of the material that comes to them. Colonel Saucer and team are also, trained to deal with what they're going to deal with as well, and identify and be able to sort and put things where they're supposed to go in terms of proper disposal and safe handling. So in terms of testing, I don't know if either are doing testing in terms of the debris itself.
Thank you. Do we have an estimation on how much debris we expect to be received in this landfill? And I'm going to assume that would go to Colonel Saucer and Gwen.
Yeah, so there's a allocated amount of waste flow that can be deposited into Calabasas on any given day, and we are not going to exceed anything that facility has been certified for. Like I said, we're going to be utilizing waste streams in multiple directions with multiple facilities taking fire ash debris. And so at this time, early in the stages, I don't have a weight or percentages to provide. Other than to reiterate that we will be absolutely in accordance with the current standards and the current limits that Calabasas has for its current waste streams as well. And so that, again, will be spread throughout Southern California.
Gwen, do you have anything to add?
Just as far as we're concerned, just so the residents are aware, our current tonnage right now, we are receiving roughly 750 tons per day. So you will definitely, obviously, we're going to see an increase. We're allowed to receive up to 3,500 tons per day. However, we've requested a waiver to increase it to 5,000 tons per day. And I just want to remind everyone that this is very similar to what happened back in 2019 when we had the Woolsey fire. We did the same thing where we increased the tonnage at that point as well.
And just to double check, right now the Calabasas landfill is already permitted to take a non-hazardous fire debris, correct?
We have been currently taking some from LA County that it's not fire debris from actual burns. We've been taking a lot of the road debris, so cleanup of roads, not personal private residences.
Understood. And Gwen, the next question is going to be for you. How do you ensure the liner doesn't fail?
Can I step on that 1 second just before stepping here? You asked for real clarification on that item, and I want to make sure it's real clear that, and I studied that at the beginning. It's a class 3 landfill. It's approved for that for non-hazardous materials. And so I don't want anybody, if you're going to read it right to you, Calabasas landfill is a class 3 facility designated to safely accept disaster-related waste, which is burned, in this case, burned residential debris, not hazardous materials from phase 1. And then what Gwen just mentioned is true. We do have, materials that we have landslides and things along the roadways and debris on roadways in the area. We are hauling that currently to Calabasas. And we're also taking LA County Flood Control District is currently delivering materials that is sediment and mud, non-toxic materials again, to the landfill for disposal.
Thank you so much. How will you ensure consistent communication with residents moving forward about developments with the Calabasas landfill? And Director, this will be for you as well as Gwen.
Okay. So, Supervisor Horvath is totally committed to this, and we are setting up, I know with her staff's help, a series of communications with you. And I know I can speak for them that if there's more needed, we'll deliver on that. So what I suggest is that we get to some frequency on some level, weekly or bi-weekly, whatever the community is desiring, so that you can stay up on it. You have our commitment. We'll communicate as much as you'd like us to, and we'll try to actually over communicate as we have events occur. I'll let Gwen respond to the other part of that.
So I think it was just a question on how are we communicating with the residents. So I am in contact with a few members of the HOA, the Saratoga Hills, at least HOA, and at the very end, I'm sure we'll hand out all our information. So if anybody has follow-up questions, they are more than welcome to contact us.
Perfect. Thank you so much. The next question is more of a clarification. Is the toxic waste or hazardous debris staying, or will it be removed from this area? I think that there's a lot of folks in the Q&A area who are, I just think, want some clarification on this. So if we could just overview what kind of debris is going to the landfill one more time, I think that folks would benefit from that.
Okay, I'll let Colonel speak to that.
Yeah, so I think what is deemed household hazardous waste, this is the most concerning of the materials. That is done during phase 1 by the Environmental Protection Agency that has the most expertise in collecting these materials, securing the materials through a series of bagging, multiple different secondary and tertiary containerized methods, and then they consolidate and then they transport. None of those materials are going to Calabasas. So none of those materials from phase 1 that are being collected currently at both Palisades and Eaton are going to Calabasas. So those materials have now been removed from the location. Then the Corps comes in and we secondarily perform an investment chip testing throughout the entirety of the property. Doesn't matter if it was a brand new house from 2024. We're gonna test for asbestos. Typically, asbestos is going to be found in much older homes, 1950s through the 1970s in particular, and we'll know what those homes are. and we'll know where those traditional locations of asbestos were utilized during the construction of those homes. But we're still going to test those specific locations for older homes. And then we're going to perform an abatement process to standard by federal and the state of California standards. Then those asbestos containing materials will be transported not to Calabasas, to another landfill that is not near Calabasas. From that, it's the fire ash debris, which is then remaining. And the fire ash debris is then transported in the methodology that has been previously discussed. And it's the fire ash debris, which is the remainder, outside of trees, outside of metals, outside of crushed concrete. Those are also different waste streams that are taken away from Calabasas. There will be potentially some green waste, but that's green waste, and I don't think that's the point of contention. Then it's the fire ash debris is what is left over, and that is what we're talking about tonight. Some of that will be transported to Calabasas, not all. Thank you.
Thank you. This is kind of like a specific question, and it touches on the routes again that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers will be using. Will the materials be trucked through Canaan Road? That's a question that we got. And Canaan Road is the road that cuts through the Santa Monica Mountains near Agora Hills.
Yeah, so there's approximately four primary routes that may be utilized for Calabasas. Canaan is one of those four primary routes, depending on the time of day. So you're going to have utilization of I-10 to the 405, and I'm not from this area, but I'm looking at the map right now. The route around the Santa Monica Mountains, if you will, on the primary federal routes and state routes is one of the routes. When permitted, and we're going to be looking at traffic, we're going to be looking at time of day. Then some of those three canyon roads, as applicable, if they're in good status and good stead, and the traffic permits, may be utilized as well. But we're going to be utilizing. We have all the modern traffic detection techniques, and we'll be looking at the most efficient route, and the one that certainly is not going to contribute to traffic congestion. But I will say there's no doubt there's going to be more trucks on the road. To say that that's not going to add to congestion would be a falsehood. Certainly it will to some effect, but we're going to try to minimize that as much as possible.
Thank you. Another quick clarifier, just really quick. When does this begin and when does this end with relating to phase 2 and debris going to the Calabasas landfill? Yeah,
so there's been no material moved yet to Calabasas landfill. We have not, the Corps has not begun phase 2, which is the primary debris removal phase for the Palisades fire. There was an announcement by the governor today saying that we are about to begin phase 2. And in the coming days, it'll be a slow start. It'll be a very slow start in the coming days. And then there will be a ramp up period whereby we will ramp up as we bring in additional capabilities and capacity from really Southern California contractors that we're utilizing for this mission. And so over that period, there will be a ramp up phase. In totality, the president has given a directive that this will be done in 1 year to cease in January of 2026. And we anticipate the Corps that we will meet that mission. There will be, if you will, a bit of a bell curve. There will be a ramp up, there will be a peak, and there will be a downturn as we get to some of the more complex properties as most of the density has been completed. We're working through that right now, and we will absolutely share as much as we can in the coming days and weeks.
Thank you. And Gwen, this next question is going to be for you. Will this expedite the closing of the Calabasas landfill?
So the Calabasas landfill, we are permitted to a specific final fill plan, so a specific elevation, if you will. So yes, if we do have an increase in tonnage, then yes, we will likely decrease our life.
Thank you. The next question is going to be, how are non-hazardous materials being determined? And that, I think that applies to several of you. So if you just want to jump in.
Yeah, I'm trying to get on the Q&A as well, and I'll answer that question. There's some good questions about how do we ensure liquid toxic waste is not being captured in the ash and being transported. There is an important note about this fire. This fire burned incredibly hot. We are seeing gun safes that no longer exist. We're seeing metals that were melted at an incredibly high temperature. And so what you typically find in a fire like this, and I'm not a scientist, but what we have found historically from previous fires was when fires burn this hot, they tend to destroy most of the toxic chemicals. I'm not saying that didn't go into the air. It did, but it did obviously almost a month ago now. And so a lot of your liquids and other hazardous waste were consumed in the fire, sadly, and then were released into the atmosphere as a byproduct. So this fire did burn hot, which in terms of fire ash debris is advantageous for reducing the hazardous waste threat. And then I'd be happy to answer that question. I thought that was an important one to clarify. If you could restate that question, I'll answer that one as well.
Perfect. Does anyone else want to jump in on that as well?
You kind of answered it, Colonel. The question was, how are you identifying the hazardous materials?
All right.
Yeah, so typically for the EPA, they're identifying it for essentially the metal containers that did remain for the most part, and the canisters. Typically in a garage, you can see the electric vehicle that was remaining in the garage, so you know there's a high likelihood of a charger, so they will find the charger. They will find the lithium battery. Then you look at containers. The containers that did survive, they're going to capture those containers that did have those hazardous materials as well. All the containers I have seen, I've not seen one container survive the fire. In terms of, if you look at an aerosol can, there's a hole at the top of it because the entire receptacle at the beginning is burned out. So everything that was in that aerosol can was essentially burned up in the fire. Same thing with paint cans. Same thing with grills. I haven't seen any of them that to date that have survived the fire. That doesn't mean that they're not out there. They could absolutely be out there, but they're collected during the EPA portion of the search through the properties.
Thank you. What are the other areas that are accepting phase 2 debris besides Calabasas? And Director, I think that's for you as well as the Colonel.
Yeah, let me let Colonel answer because I think he may have the list. Let me look at my data in front of me, but Colonel, I don't know if you can give an answer while I'm checking this.
Yeah, so there's different sites for Eaton than there are for Palisades. Some are utilized by both. Calabasas is not being utilized by Eaton, and we are continuing to expand the list. So we are not settling for the current list that we do have. We're looking for ways to expand the list of receiving facilities. Currently, as it stands for Calabasas, or for the Palisades fire rather, Calabasas is one of the locations, Semi Valley, Sunshine Canyon, and El Sobrante.
Yeah, that tracks with me as well.
And that's just the fire ash debris. I'm sorry, Director. That's just the fire ash debris. If you look at recycling, we got several facilities within the greater Los Angeles County, none of which in the vicinity of Calabasas, for crushed concrete, for metals, and also the asbestos containing materials are not going near Calabasas. It's at a facility far to the east. And most of your household hazardous materials are going well over 150 miles away from this location.
Thank you so much. Our next question is going to be, what are the earthquake safety measures, and specifically for the liner? And Gwen, I think this one's going to be for you.
Yeah, so one of the requirements that we have is that at any time there is an earthquake, we do have to physically drive around the site to see if there were any impacts to our gas collection system, to our liquid systems. One of the things that, or one of the environmental protection systems that we also have is we have monitoring wells downstream, down gradient, to the west as well, west and south of our landfill that we monitor semi-annually. So we check to make sure and I think that was one of your questions before, was how do we ensure that the liner system is working? So we do monitor these wells. We take samples and we test them for, I think, 200 constituents. Those results are submitted to our regional water control board. So that is one way. That is how we know that our liner system is working properly.
Thank you, Gwen. Our next question is going to be for you, Dr. Davis. This is a clarifier from earlier, as folks in the Q&A section have been asking for clarification. How is the county monitoring air quality in the areas surrounding the landfill?
So air quality is monitored by the South Coast Air Quality Management Districts. They have been doing some mobile testing in the area at the end of January in the fire area. And the results will be posted online. Some of it is already posted as well. And then there'll be a number of other organizations who are also doing some indoor and outdoor air quality studies. There could be universities in South Coast as well. So right now, the responsible party for monitoring air quality remains South Coast Air Quality Management District.
Thank you. And just as a follow-up to that one, for the Colonel, what is happening in regard to air monitoring at the burn areas?
Yeah, so for the core, that's a great question. Thank you for the question. So when we're actually at the site and we are going to disturb the current ash footprint, so the employees that move into this ash footprint, they will be in appropriate attire, much like you've been seeing. So they will have a Tie-X suit on, they will have gloves, they will have a helmet, they will have steel-toe boots because there's a lot of metal hazards and nails. And then they will have a breathing apparatus because they're in the ash debris and they're disturbing the ash debris. On each of those employees, they will have a personal air monitor. Around the job site, we'll have a series of tripods, if you will, that will also have air monitors facing the job site from all the angles, most specifically, certainly where the wind may be blowing that day. Before any ash is disturbed, it's completely saturated with water. And then we also have standoff air monitoring units that will put typically at a standoff location. Say there's a surviving house that is near the ash debris location that we're working in. We will also have an air monitoring station out there. Now that is for the safety of our employees, but we also will share that data and share that information with public health authorities. I will tell you this, and I offer this, and I know that this offers little comfort. I'm looking to the Q&A section here, but I've been around this problem set for weeks now. And now this is a personal election, and I respect anybody's election on wearing a mask or not. Absolutely. I have elected not to wear a mask because I have looked at these problem sets before, and when the ash is settled and when the ash is saturated, I don't wear a mask. Now, if I was to go onto a job site where the ash debris is being disturbed, I will absolutely have a breathing apparatus on during that period. And that's my own personal risk assessment. And I've been on these sites every day, each day for the past month. And I know that likely provides little assurance to many of the folks on the chat line, but that's my own personal risk assessment is I'm concerned when the ash is disturbed. And so are our employees. When the ash is not disturbed, that's my own personal assessment for the attire that I wear. So I offer that for the group as well.
Daniel, can I add something real quick? Thank you, Carl. There was a question previously about where the different materials are going. We've posted, one of my staff members has posted a document on the chat that lists the 17 known locations that are available with the type of materials that can be what they can accept. So if the listeners want to take a look at that, or at least it's being posted as we talk, it'll come up. It's public information, and we thought it'd be useful for the conversation.
Thank you, Director. The next question is more of a hypothetical, but what happens if one of the trucks conducting transport were to get into a car accident? And that'll be for you, Colonel.
Yeah, so I mean, we have, certainly we're trying to take as many mitigation measures as we can. We're going to utilize the designated routes. All the trucks will have all the appropriate warning reflectors and lights, and we'll do everything that we can to mitigate during travel. We're going to have our select protocols if there was to be such an accident. We will absolutely contact all the necessary authorities to come out there for the retrieval. If there is a retrieval, I mean, these are Super 10, Tier 4, Tier 5 dump trucks that are made specifically made for movement of heavy at times materials that are going to landfills, so on and so forth. So we're only utilizing certified trucks by the state of California that are for the purpose of movement of heavy materials to places like landfills. And then we would follow all local and state protocols if there was to be an accident.
I'll add that the drivers are all be heavy truck certified and meet California requirements for driving heavy equipment on our roads.
Thank you, Director. The next question is going to be for you, Gwen. Will this be a 7-day-a-week operation? And also, we got just someone who flagged. If you can just speak a little louder too. It sounds like your mic is a little
Okay.
quiet.
Okay, let me know if if you need me to speak up. But yeah, no, it will not be a 7-day a week. We will be working Monday through Saturday. We will have an increase in hour, just 1 hour. So we typically are open 8 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock in the evening. We will be opening an extra hour in the morning and an extra hour in.
Thank you for that. How long does the chip testing take for results, Colonel?
That's a great question, and I can't give you the amount of days on this one. What I can tell you is we utilize the facility here in Southern California, so it has greatly reduced the response time frame as opposed to the last wildfire that we addressed in Maui, in Hawaii. We had a much longer turnaround, not surprisingly. We utilize a local lab here, so I mean, I'm not going to say it's a matter of hours. It's certainly a matter of days before we get that information back.
Thank you for that. Will the SCAMD and Water District reports be released to the public? And that'll be for Dr. Davis as well as you, Gwen.
So South Coast Air Quality Management District has already released some of their reports and will continue to do so. If you go to their aqmd.gov 2025 wildfire response, you can see some of that information there. We are also planning to, as more information becomes available from others who are doing research or assessments, to try to have all of that hosted, or at least one place for people to go to see all of that information on our public health .LA County website, but we don't have those assessments just yet. But you may see from those particular agencies that are doing the assessments that you may see it up there first. And for now, South Coast has some information up already.
And Gwen, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Only that in any of the information or data that we do collect, whether through samples and things like that, they are definitely, if we don't post them, obviously, but if you wanted to see them, we could provide for them.
Daniel, let me just add real quick, because I know I'm telling people to go look at it, but let me just tell you. So January 31st, and I'm reading from their website, a mobile survey was conducted in the Eaton fire area near cleanup and repopulated zones. Results showed no elevated levels of air toxic metals, including lead and arsenic, nor VOCs, including benzene. And they do list all of all of the components, the pollutants that were measured in that time. They are doing some work in Palisades. They were tripped up a little bit by the rain in terms of doing those assessments, but that gives you a sense of what they are showing on their website and what they will show moving forward.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to the next question. And this one is just to reiterate again, we would like to ask, is the ash hazardous? And feel free to jump in if that pertains.
Well, we've talked about the fire debris and what happens with a fire and structures burning and all of the things that burned or were mixed in that. So yes, it can be toxic or dangerous depending on what burned and coming into contact and your concentration of coming in contact with that. In general, as mentioned, in terms of the reason for doing hazardous debris removal, phase 1 and phase 2 is to try to get the bulk of where all of that stuff is. And to get that up and have that safely removed, transported, and disposed of in accordance with regulation. So yes.
And Colonel, would you like to add anything to that?
And I will stick with the doctor's word on that.
Thank you. All right, our next question, can private contractors begin phase 2 if phase 1 is complete? How do they obtain permits and what does that process look like? And that'll be for you, Director.
Yes. LA County's issuing permits for the opt-in program, which we've been discussing tonight a little bit, is going to be conducted by the government forces, which includes Army Corps of Engineers and LA County. We're accounting for the material, and our goal is to remove safely all of the debris and fire ash from the properties that have been affected by these two fires safely and quickly. There's another option where you opt out and you decide that you're going to utilize your own funds to remove the materials from your property on your own. There will be a permit required for this so that we can primarily track a couple things. First, that you're doing that in an orderly fashion that complies with all state and federal laws and local laws regarding the removal of such materials. The program that we're modeling it after is the Army Corps of Engineers program. So you cannot begin you will not be issued a permit unless you can show proof that you had a phase 1 analysis of your property by EPA and that it in fact has the green light to commence. If you don't have that, you will have to pay for that potentially on your own as well. If you don't have EPA do it, if they don't get to it, you would then have to bring in specialists that qualify for that process as well. Once you provide proof of that, a permit will be issued from LA County Public Works in our EPIC LA system. That permit is being currently designed so that we can carefully monitor and again, making sure you meet all standards, that the contractors that utilize this are certified for that kind of removal as well. We would issue the permit to you. The permit would require a work plan showing where your property is, that you have proof that you have ownership of that property, and that you are using an approved haul route, and that you are going to be taking the material to an approved landfill for the materials that you're separating. Same materials have to be separated and have to be disposed of properly. So this is quite an ordeal for a private contractor to handle on their own, but it is available to property owners that seek to do this on their own with their own money. At the end, we will be inspecting to see that it was done in compliance with those provisions, and then we would sign off the property as cleared from that debris. The permit itself is in draft form and we are going to be discussing it at a workshop this Thursday where we're going to be seeking input from contractors and others on that permit in its form. And then I intend Thursday to make that available, Thursday evening, to make that permit available to the private sector. Just as a little pitch, you should know that we have quite a few, like over 7,000 opt-ins already in place for the public program. The opt-outs only equate to about 1.6% of the number of total ROEs that we reviewed so far. To find out more about that permit, go to recovery.lacounty.gov or call us at 1-800-844 347-3332. I'll say it again, 1-800-347-3332. And as a reminder, you have to your property, for any property impacted, you will be required to opt in or opt out of this program. Opting in, if you decide to opt in, I'm recommending that people take the full benefit and opt in for foundation removals along with all the debris removal as a part of the program. And I also recommend that even if you think you're going to do this on your own, that you opt in to start to make sure that you retain that ability to enjoy the benefit of that program. If you decide that you then want to opt out and go your own way, you have that opportunity. But once you opt out, we cannot let you back into that program. So it's important to know that. And then the other thing that's important is the date. March 31st is the last day that you can opt into the government program run by the Army Corps of Engineers and LA County Public Works.
Thank you, Director. And just to touch on this really quick, our office is sending out a lot of this information every day as well. So please be sure to subscribe to our newsletter at lindsayhorvath.lacounty.gov. If you scroll all the way to the bottom of the page, you can sign up for the newsletter there. A lot of the information that Public Works, Public Health, and our other partner agencies are giving to us, we put in there. It's also, a lot of it is going on to that recovery.lacounty.gov site as well, and you can find that there. We're going to
Daniel,
go ahead and
Daniel, I'm so bad about numbers these days. There's so many of them that I'm going to give that number one more time, and my staff's going to put it in the chat. 844 347 3332. And I'm going to make sure my staff puts that number in. That number is really important because if you're someone who, isn't comfortable with the web or want to go that way about ROEs, we've got people that'll answer that phone call for you and actually walk you through. And then we're also taking the ROE system to the people. So at any of the DRCs that are out there, recovery centers, we have hard copies of this form there for you as well. And those that are techie, you're going to really enjoy what we've done. We've made a web-based application, makes it very easy for you to go through and opt in or opt out of our program.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. Our next question is, how is the Regional Water Board addressing the possible contamination of groundwater? And that'll be for you, Gwen.
Again, as I mentioned, we're heavily regulated. We do work closely with the Regional Water Board and Regional Water Quality Control Board. We do take our samples as prescribed, what required. Our Regional Water Board inspector has no issues with all the water quality information that we submitted to him. We're within all our limits and regulations.
Thank you for that. We'll go ahead and move on to our next question. How do the bags of debris not rip in transit or when dumping into the landfill? And that would be for you, Colonel.
Yeah, so the 10 mil plastic, which again is a heavy mil plastic that is used to encapsulate the fire ash debris, is intended for transport. That is to secure the waste during transport. Once it moves into the facility, it is deposited in the facility like any other trash that's deposited in the facility. And so it'll be in accordance with the regulations and how the landfill accepts the waste, but that's exactly how it'll be transported in there and deposited.
Thank you for that. Our next question, who will oversee these safety protocols are being followed? Will the city have an independent auditor? And for that one, I would assume that would be for you, Gwen, and possibly for you, Director.
I'll let the director take that question.
Yeah. Well, this is a federal program that has their own regulatory requirements they are following. We are not providing oversight in the form of like inspections of their operations. As I said, though, we are overseeing we are providing regulatory oversight of the private contractors who are doing this work through the permit that I mentioned. And then we are customizing those permits based on city input. So it's unusual that the county's actually issuing the one permit, but we're doing that through an MOU with each city. And then, as I said, the city also has regulations that, have to be followed by the private contractors through and through. So we're working very closely with your city officials, your public works directors, as we put together this permit for private contractors. I have full confidence in EPA and Army Corps in terms of their regulatory activities. I mean, these are the two most expert entities in our country with respect to this operation.
And I'll just add to that, Director, that my father was in the construction business, and I have a good idea of how challenging the construction business can be. And I will tell you, for these subcontractors throughout Southern California, they perform the work to standard and follow all the rules and regulation. They will get paid on time and in full. And if you've ever been in the construction industry before, that's a heck of an incentive to follow the rules. Now, that doesn't mean that we won't have an issue. If we do have an issue, though, and that is outside the bounds of the contract, we will go somewhere else to receive that service. So there's an absolute incentive for those subcontractors to adhere to all the rules that we are imposing upon this procedure during transport.
That's a good point, and not one I thought of, is that the contractors are working for the Corps, but they do have to comply with local laws. And of course, we have our oversight of those local laws, whether it's the street right-of-ways, they're going to, if they use a county road, then my road, me as a road commissioner, my folks would be regulating and making sure that the trucks are proper and that the drivers are, are following all laws regarding, the use of our roadways. And that's the same with our drainage systems. If we see that there's pollutants being released or something like that, we would be citing, the subcontractors for, improper discharge into our waterways. So those laws are not, they're not exempt from local laws with respect to, protecting the environment and our roadways and that. And so that applies whatever contractors are working in our local conditions.
Thank you, Director. Some homeowners have received from the EPA a notice that phase 1 will be addressed in phase 2, and they're asking what this means.
Yeah, so I'll take that one. So, we work in concert with the EPA. We are collaborating with them daily. So what typically occurs in a disaster of this scale is that you're going to have a certain percentage of properties that are deemed unsafe for that ground level inspection. So what the EPA is doing right now is human beings and individuals are walking into the ash area, and they are hand selecting and hand removing hazardous materials. When a structure is deemed unsafe, or potentially there's another structure nearby, like a tree, that is partially damaged and it poses a threat, or there's still standing walls that are compromised and leaning, then the EPA will defer phase 1 activities to the Army Corps. And what will happen is we will render the area safe first, and then we will execute the phase 1 operations in concert with EPA once the parcel of land has been rendered safe for whatever that hazard is. And so that's an excellent question. I do appreciate it. But there will be a carryover of a certain percentage of properties that were deemed unsafe that we will perform with EPA phase 1 in conjunction with phase 2. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Our next question is going to be, are there health risks for those who live right next to the landfill, and how will they be protected? And feel free to jump in, but I think Dr. Davis.
Gwen spoke about this as well, just in terms of all the monitoring and the things that are put in place in order to both monitor the operations and ensure that it's not having an impact on the surrounding community.
Thank you so much for that one. Appreciate it. Our next question is going to be, does the soil need to be removed 2 feet below or just the surface and the burn area? Colonel Saucer.
So the federal program under the private property debris removal program will, at the election of the owner, we will either remove the foundation or not. Again, that's the election of the owner. If we remove the foundation, that will be done. But either way, outside the perimeter of the foundation itself, we have what's called the ash footprint or the ash perimeter. And that is variable depending on the structure. Perhaps it was a two-story structure and it fell while it was burning, and that ash debris is carried much to one side or the other of the foundation. But we will find where that ash perimeter is, and 6 inches of soil will be taken throughout the entirety of the ash perimeter. So election of the foundation or not, and then the ash perimeter, 6 inches of soil encompassing all of the ash perimeter.
Thank you for that one. Our next question is going to be, how much debris will be going to Calabasas versus other landfills, and can you give examples?
Was the question the type of debris? Unfortunately, my sound cut off.
No, it's just how much debris in total will be going to Calabasas versus other landfills, or proportionally. How is that being
Yeah, so
divided?
it's difficult to say right now because we're ascertaining traffic patterns, the ability. We are going to be doing nighttime operations, and we're working with a contractor onto the degree of a nighttime operations that they're able to commit to. And again, that slow start. It's difficult for me to talk about percentages until we have an idea after we get past the slow start and we start ramping up in terms of percentages going to Calabasas. Proximity wise, Calabasas, as Mr. Pastrella indicated in his opening comments, proximity wise, it is close, but that doesn't always mean that it's going to be the preferred location. As you can see during the rainy season with those canyon roads, some of those routes are certainly not going to be utilized or preferred, or they're going to be closed. And then once you get on the Santa Monica Freeway, some of our other facilities are going to be more advantageous. So I think that the percentages could vary over time, vary during season, vary during daylight and nighttime hours. And I hate to, give a variable answer, but I can't give you an exact percentage at this time.
Understood. And just to ask clarity on that one, is the majority of the debris going to Calabasas?
I would say the majority of the debris, no. The majority of the fire ash debris, likely. But again, we have not gone through all the percentages.
Understood. Will the contents of the debris trucks be flammable?
The context of the fire ash debris will not be flammable outside of the actual vehicle that's transporting it, like any other vehicular vehicle. It's going to itself, the engine of the dump truck certainly could be inflammable in an accident, but not be in accordance with how it is existing today. The actual material itself, no.
Thank you so much. We're going to go on to our next question, and this one's kind of a circle back. We're getting a lot of folks who really want who really want to clarify health for adjacent communities. Can you revisit the question regarding health concerns for adjacent residents who are around the landfill? And can you touch on that, Gwen and Dr. Davis?
So I'm going to suggest that Colonel Saucer also, again, sort of reiterate the steps that are taken to reduce those risks, because I think that's really what this is coming to in terms of, what happens as stuff is being transported there, what are the risks related to that, what are the risks once it's there. In each of those operations, there are steps that are taken to reduce the risk of, anything becoming airborne, and that's where some of the hazard comes from in terms of these being small particles. Colonel Saucer mentioned about things being wrapped up and how they're transported, put in containers, etc. And then there are operations at the landfill that were mentioned earlier as well, in order to reduce the risk of anything becoming airborne, which would be generally what would be expected to be the risk, coming from that. And landfills, again, are heavily regulated and monitored in terms of gases that may be produced or coming out through the natural decomposition of waste that are at the landfills. I think that's my understanding of this question in terms of the health risks related to the transport and disposal of the waste inside of the landfill. So I encourage both of them to sort of reiterate some of the things that were said earlier.
Understood. Gwen, did you have anything to add?
No, and I think thing to just reiterate again, as the Colonel had mentioned before, when they do go through phase 1, they're the ash is they're wetting it all down. Same thing once it gets to our site, we're going to wet it down as well. We're going to cover it at the end of the day, every day. And again, as Dr. Davis mentioned, we do have all those environmental control systems in place to help prevent any ash from getting airborne or in collecting all the gas that's being produced by degradation.
So to be very specific, I think the most pressing potential risk is going to be, poor air quality from dust being kicked up. And again, steps are being taken in order to reduce that.
And I think too, I'll add that we're taking ash from an uncontrolled environment, which right now my agency, along with the Corps and EPA, are trying to control. We're trying to control flow from the burned properties, destroyed properties with BMPs, but they're not perfect. By the time the Corps comes in and actually wraps this up, 10 mil cover, and takes it away, you start to move it to a controlled environment, and you get it to a landfill, which is the highest level of control that we can actually provide. So I agree with Dr. Davis that it's the time in the field, in situ, where it is now, from the time it gets to the landfill, where we're really concentrating on getting people aware of the risk and asking them not to engage with the material until it's disposed of properly. So there's a much higher risk, to put that in plain language, to be living near the actual burn area than, say, the landfill itself.
Understood. Thank you so much, Director. I just want to say that with regards to the health impacts, for our communities here that we represent, there are lots of folks asking. We keep hearing steps are being taken. Can you please elaborate to what steps are being taken to mitigate any health concerns of adjacent community members? Folks are worried. They're really concerned about their health. They want to know that they're going to be safe. So can you please, each of you, just jump in and elaborate on what specific steps are being taken to ensure that these communities are going to be safe?
Okay. This is kind of the cradle to grave question, I think. I think we've been focusing on you as living near landfill, but I will again start with the cradle to grave a little bit here. What I mean by cradle is where the burn area is. In the burn areas, we began a program, entered into a program with the Army Corps of Engineers and EPA, well, FEMA, and FEMA has directed the Corps and EPA to come and get involved in controlling these hazards that we've been talking about tonight. Both the phase 1 materials, household hazard materials, and the fire debris ash. That is something the county entered into agreement with your risk in mind, because we want the materials to be taken out properly, safely, to and controlled in the form of the landfill. The county stepped up into that position and has entered into the agreement with the state and federal government. We're representing the cities in that agreement. And again, with the mission to control these, to reduce the risk of these materials to human health. We also started a program of private, as you heard earlier, private disposal of the materials. And we feel this is the area that is probably most loose, that we're really concerned that we get the contracting community properly lined up and properly certified before they touch any of this ash, and that they properly haul it and dispose of it in a manner that we approve of. So this risk reduction that the county's undertaking is like overall program to remove the materials from an uncontrolled environment to a controlled environment in a safe way. So that's the county's role. And then I guess I'll kick it off to Colonel Sauser, who's essentially one of our contractors taking that material off-site.
Yeah, so I'm happy to discuss this again. I think and I opened with this early in our conversation, but we're taking essentially the last couple of decades of fire debris removal lessons learned, and those have culminated to best practices, and those best practices are being utilized here to an extent that I would say it has not been seen before, certainly at this level. To Mr. Pastrella, Director Pastrella's comments, this is a vast collaboration of many entities at the local municipalities, at the state agencies, and at the federal agencies. So we're meeting all the requirements at all three echelons as we move through the collection and the transport and the disposal of this material. We are paying very specific attention to waste streams so that the waste streams are going to the appropriate designations. And then the actual transport itself. The transport itself is in full guidance and under the restrictions of federal and state requirements. And I would say that we have exceeded those on the transport of this material. And so the collection method we've already talked about, which is very important. There's air monitoring going around during collection. So we're having an idea if particles are even getting into the air after it's been saturated. So remember that we don't touch it until it's been fully saturated. Now it's fully saturated, then we're monitoring throughout, but then we're monitoring when we're actually now disturbing it with its saturated state. And so we know if it's in the air when we are picking it up, when it is saturated. It is put then into that plastic encapsulate saturated. So it's going to be, and it's going to be transporting to that point. It's not going to another transfer station. So it's not being disturbed again. So I think that's an important note. So once it goes in the back of that transport, that Super 10 dump truck, it then is encapsulated in plastic, saturated. And we already know how that material has behaved in the air when it was saturated before it leaves. And then we transport it along approved routes that all local municipalities, state and federal authorities know those routes that are going to go on. And then it's going to go to the disposal facility and be transferred to that disposal facility in accordance with their current regulations. And they are going to have air monitoring and they're going to resaturate during disposal. So I think that's important to note. Those are the measures that are going to be taken. I think absolutely the concerns are 100% valid. I understand the concerns, but I am confident in our methodologies during collection, transport, and ultimate disposal.
Daniel, maybe I can add something in for the residents that are listening. My name is Michael Chi. I'm the Public Information Officer for LA County Sanitation Districts. As you've been listening to my colleague Gwen, we're the operator on behalf of LA County of the Calabasas landfill. And I understand this concern very clearly, as well as do my colleagues. What we want to add to what the Colonel just said, what Director Pastrana has been saying is Calabasas landfill has been in operation for many decades now. It's been operating safely, and it's been operating under very high engineering standards and regulatory standards for many years. Our team recently looked at the total number of complaints we've received from residents for the past 4 years in total. So since 2020, we've received a total of 8 complaints from residents. Let me correct that, a total of 10 complaints from residents, 8 of them coming from the same individual with regards to odor control, which was not directly being generated from this particular landfill. So to bring some peace of mind for residents in the area, please understand that there's a very highly qualified engineering team that monitors this landfill every single day. They monitor the waste that's coming into this landfill, and we have every confidence in the Army Corps' ability to bring the waste we're dealing with in this particular situation to us safely and in a manner where it can be completely contained and mitigated under the regulations and the processes and procedures that we use and that we use every single day. So I hope that brings some additional clarity for residents.
Thank you. Does anyone have anything else to add? Okay, we'll move on then. Our next question is going to be, how will you build confidence and trust with residents that you will protect the safety of those living adjacent to the landfill? And this question is going to be for everyone. I will start with regard to building confidence and trust with the communities. Our office is always here advocating on behalf of the Calabasas community. I'm grateful for our partners for agreeing to be on this call today so that we can make sure that we're getting information out to folks. I think that that's an important piece of making sure that we are delineating information out to folks and getting as much information out as we can so that people have the facts and they're not relying so heavily on rumors or anything like that. But I'm going to throw that question to the rest of you as well.
Thank you, Daniel. This is Mark Mistrella again, Director of Public Works, LA County. And we are, our brand is we build trust, and this is part of it. How we're going to build trust with you, continue to build trust, is by communicating often, being transparent with what we know when we know it, and keeping you in the loop. And the first part of that is listening. So creating great opportunities to hear and direct lines for you to call with your concerns about what's happening in your community, whether it's this landfill or any other infrastructure that we maintain or operate within the city of Calabasas or the surrounding area. We want to hear from you. You can call our number, dispatch number. It's a 24-hour number with any concerns you have about infrastructure again, or the environment, things that our facilities are, how our facilities are serving you, I guess customer service concerns. And the number is 1-800-675-HELP. And that spells, actually the phone number is 1-800-675-4357. And I would take that call directly anytime, and we'll direct you to who can help you best. Our absolute interest is having you aware of what's happening in your community and be prepared for future incidents like this one. Unfortunately, we expect in our lives more of them to happen. And so we want to make sure that you are prepared for them as they come. But not only that, we're maintaining your quality of life through the infrastructure we provide you. So that's how we're going to get there, Daniel, working with your office.
Thank you so much, Director. Would anyone else like to?
Just really quickly on my end, you know, I had mentioned earlier that I've been in contact with multiple residents within the community, specifically Saratoga Hills. Many of them have my own personal cell number, and they've called me many times, you know, 9, 10 o'clock at night. So if there's ever any concerns, questions, again, you guys are more than welcome to contact me. I will also put our emergency number on the chat. But yeah, you know, we're here to try to be the best neighbor that we can. And you know, and as Michael had mentioned earlier, when we have complaints, we are responsive. If we get an odor complaint or any sort of aesthetic complaint, you know, we'll respond immediately to detect if that's our landfill issue. So again, you know, I hope that I've built the trust within the community. And again, I'll just throw that emergency number on there as well.
So I'll just add. I mean, I think you know, we certainly nest with all the comments that were made by both the previous speakers. But from the Corps of Engineers perspective, and we are ultimately accountable to the public. And we, for well over 200 years, over 220 years, the Corps of Engineers has been executing civil work projects on behalf of the people of the United States, and it's always been a federal, state, and local partnership. There's nothing the Corps does that we do in isolation. It has to be done through partnerships. So we're used to partnership, and we realize, and I mean this sincerely, everything that I do has got to be done with partnership. I come from the Memphis district along the Mississippi River. That's my day job. I'm going to be out here for the next several months, but I command the Memphis district, and we have partnered in the Memphis district for over 150 years on civil work projects. And this is exactly in line with what we do day in and day out. And you have heard my colleague, Colonel Eric Swenson, perhaps say this, but it's a phrase that we use often in the Corps of Engineers, and we move at the speed of trust. And we know that that is vital. That's why I'm here tonight. And I will come back, and I will be as transparent and responsive as I can possibly be as a representative of the Corps of Engineers. It's in our interest to do this in partnership with all the communities that are affected, and in this case, Calabasas. And so that transparency is key, and that partnership is key, and then ultimately that will equate to trust. And we will come back as many times as necessary to discuss this, and we will certainly receive any concerns from the community that we will action at our level in concert with our partners at LA County Public Works and the Sanitation Division. And I will say Supervisor Horvath and her team, I don't know if anybody asks harder questions of the Corps than Supervisor Horvath, and she does that all the time, every day, directly to me and to others. So there is the public officials as well that are looking after the behalf of the citizenry. So I appreciate the opportunity.
And for the Public Health Department, we are continuing to provide guidance. We do have another set of frequently asked questions for properties indirectly affected by the fire, so not next to and not within the fire perimeter. And we'll update those as needed. As mentioned, we also are developing the website for, and right now it has on there a table describing all of the post-fire air, soil, and water assessment activities being done by either government or academic institutions. And we intend to update that page weekly as we get results from the various assessments so that people can see that information publicly as it becomes available. So we'll continue to do that along the way, but right now you can see at least what activities are known at the moment in terms of assessments on soil, air, and water.
Thank you all so much for that. I do want to say that we have some questions coming into the chat, so I'm going to go off script for just a second and ask really quick for us to please reiterate, just because I think that I don't know if some folks have maybe joined a little bit late or so, but can you reiterate that the debris that is going to the Calabasas landfill, can you reiterate that that is if that is hazardous or is it not? And what kind of debris is that, Colonel?
Yeah, so happy to do that. Colonel Brian Saucer, I'm the commander of the Emergency Field Office for the United States Army Corps of Engineers here for the Palisades fire. So essentially, this is separate material than what has been in the news here recently. The EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency has collected and is collecting during the month of February household
Colonel
hazardous
Saucer?
materials that would include paints, aerosols, propane, acetylene tanks. That it
Colonel
would also
Saucer?
include lithium batteries, charging stations. Looks like I'm
It-
no longer on.
Yes, so
Can you hear?
if I may, can
Yeah,
you hear me? Yes, so I can hear you, but you cut out for about 30 seconds. If
I
you
can
could
hear
do
you
us
now. Yeah, it was frozen there for a bit.
yes, if you could do me a favor and turn
Okay.
off your camera and then repeat what you just said. I think that if you turn off your camera, folks may be able to catch more of what you're saying. And if you could just repeat what you
Okay,
were
we'll try
saying
this. How do you
before.
hear me
Yes.
now?
You're coming in strong, Brian. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll give it a shot. Yeah, so what you've been seeing on the news here recently is what we're deeming phase one, and that is the Environmental Protection Agency, and they're going through and collecting household hazardous waste. Unfortunately, everything's frozen on this end for me. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can.
And yes.
Okay, my apologies. It's freezing on my end. I'll just keep going. And so that household hazardous waste consists of typically items that you're going to see under a kitchen sink, in a garage. That would be paints, that would be aerosol cans, that would be pesticides, that would be propane tanks, that would also be batteries for EVs, lithium batteries, and charging stations. And the Environmental Protection Agency is going through the entirety of the impact areas, regardless of opt-in and opt-out, and they are hand selecting and hand confiscating these materials and securing them in a fashion that they can now transport out of the impacted areas. So that's much of what you're seeing. Those are what we're deeming the most hazardous of the materials in the burn site. So they collect those. After that, there's an assessment that the Corps does per property, and we look at every property the same, and we assume that there's going to be additional threats there. I'll talk a little bit about asbestos. So, certainly the age of the house does matter, but irregardless of the age of the house, we are going to do a series of chip testing throughout the property to test it for asbestos, and also go to those more suspicious locations like chimney flutes, foundations, old tiling, and we will chip everything for asbestos. If we find any asbestos whatsoever, we will perform an abatement process that is through federal and state guidelines to remove those asbestos materials from the debris, and that goes to a separate location. So the household hazardous materials previously discussed collected by the EPA, that is not going to Calabasas landfill. Asbestos-related materials not going to Calabasas landfill. Concretes, metals, and other associated waste streams are not going to Calabasas landfill. We may have some green waste going there. I know that's not the point of contention, So that would be foliage, trees, shrubbery, that could potentially be going there. And then the remaining fire ash debris, which is left on site after those other materials have been taken away, that is what is being encapsulated into a 10 mil plastic liner and then wrapped and then transported appropriately to the landfill. So those are the waste streams that we're talking about. And the waste stream that would be going to Calabasas that I know most people are concerned about is the fire ash debris. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. What precautions were taken during the Woolsey fire and other disasters for disposal in landfills? And are you taking similar precautions here? And feel free to jump in if that pertains to you.
Yeah, well, I can start. This is Director Mark Estrella, Los Angeles County Public Works. During Woolsey, the difference between this operation and the Woolsey operation is that that was a state-run operation in conjunction with the state of California and contractor we oversaw for the area. And we took similar, almost exact precautions as this, what you're hearing now described very well by Colonel Sauser. So the difference between this program and that program is that we now have the Army Corps of Engineers, a federal program coming in with their expertise to perform the same or similar precaution in what they do, caution in what they do, and best practices that you heard. So one of the interesting things about LA County, the county itself, is we've become pretty worn torn and battle torn entity that has good expertise in disposal of these materials because of the number of fires we've experienced in recent years. And so you have a local entity, unlike many other places, that understands the program, and then you have the Corps with their work experience, which is extensive with respect to such materials, and of course EPA.
Thank you. Our next question is going to be under windy, extreme heat, power shutoffs, or wildfire conditions, will the transport routes be rerouted or canceled? Calabasas is in a high fire severity zone. And I think that's going to go to Colonel Saucer.
Yeah, so absolutely, we'll be coordinating with Director Pastrella's team on LA County roads. And certainly if there's any threats to any of their routes and we receive any advisement from local or state authorities, we would avoid those routes. So absolutely, we'd be taking consideration for extreme weather or potential or actual fires or rain events, so on and so forth. We will follow direction from the local and state authorities.
Thank you so much for that. Our next question is going to be, what were the lessons learned with other disasters and how are you ensuring this won't be another quote unquote lesson?
Yeah, so in terms of the lessons learned, it's really, there hasn't been an associated catastrophe associated with the wildlife cleanup participated by the Corps. When I say lessons learned, I'm just saying systematically, we've looked at how we remove the debris and how we can do it to further ensure the safety and the public health for all parties involved, adjacent communities, for our own workers. And so those actual methodologies and policies and procedures we have adjusted over the years. But there's been no lessons learned from like a catastrophe or a large scale event where there was a failure. When I talk about lessons learned, I'm talking about just incrementally making changes to improve the process.
Thank you so much. Our next question is going to be, will the incoming rains impact any of these operations? And that'll be for you, Director and Colonel.
Yeah, they will definitely affect the operations and will be, as was stated by Colonel Sauser, as the chief of the Los Angeles County Flood Control District, we're monitoring the rain events and potential for debris flows, mud flows, landslides. In fact, the rain is going to affect our ability to speed the program because it's going to affect our ability to use certain roads, as was discussed earlier. So yes, the answer is yes, it will affect it, and the Corps will be advised in conjunction with us about that, with oversight from our Office of Emergency Management. So we've already encountered a couple, not setbacks, but adjustments that need to be made based on terrain, road closures, and potential rain events and debris flows.
Thank you. And Colonel Saucer, do you have anything else you'd like to add, or did that cover it?
No, I think the director's statements 100% I concur with, and we will follow all directives from LA County.
I
Fantastic.
would also note, Daniel, that the materials won't be removed unless it's safe to do so. For instance, if we have a severe wind event or any event that would cause these materials to become loose or uncontrolled again, that would be aggravated by construction activity or movement of materials, then we would cease the operation.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Question for Colonel Saucer. Can you clarify what asbestos are and how we are preventing them from being harmful for families moving back in?
So asbestos is a material that was utilized to a greater degree in the mid part of the previous century. You go back to the 1940s through the 1970s. Certainly the nation and localities learned that asbestos is a carcinogen. And so over the decades, the use of asbestos has absolutely decreased exponentially, especially the use for households. That being said, it's entirely possible that a newer home might have had a modification that included some type of asbestos product. Unlikely. But what we do see is some of the older homes, you sometimes do find what was called asbestos containing materials. Could be on tiling, could be in the flute of a chimney, could be on other products that were utilized decades ago. It doesn't matter the age of the house. We're going to test asbestos for all the parcels that we encounter. It's part of our procedures. And so we will go to highly susceptible locations where we know asbestos might be located typically, but we're still going to test throughout the totality of the parcel. And then if we find asbestos, there's a series, it's too much to discuss over this call, but there's a series of protocols you follow. It's called an abatement process when you find asbestos that's been refined over the decades at the federal and the state levels. And then we follow all those abatement processes to collect those materials. And then we remove those materials from the fire ash debris. And they are then secured in a similar fashion that you would see the EPA utilizing now, and then transported to the appropriate certified facility, which is not Calabasas. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So next question we have is a little bit of a long one, but I think it's a very important question to get answered. The question is, the Los Angeles Times reported last week that toxic ash could be taken to 5 LA County landfills that were not designated to take hazardous material. The LA Times named the Calabasas landfill as one of these 5 landfills that were not designed to take hazardous material. It sounds like toxic ash will be coming to the Calabasas landfill. Did the LA Times get the story wrong? Was the Calabasas landfill designed to handle this type of hazardous material?
Gwen, do you want to answer about what materials you can take? Or so one thing, let me give an overarching. I mean, it sounds almost like the question misphrases the Times article. So let's just go straight to the straight answers about which have been over and over again tonight. No materials, only landfills able to accept the materials that we're talking about will take them. So asbestos specifically goes to specific landfills regulated by California State Cal Recycle for the state of California. The hazardous materials that we were talking about in phase 1 can only be handled by certain landfills, and that is not Calabasas. So we are not transporting any or allowing any to our landfill in Calabasas, the county's landfill, any materials that are not allowed to go there. So it's again, if you want to look up what is allowed to go to a Calabasas landfill, technically you can look up the specific designation, which is a class 3 facility. Calabasas landfill is a class 3 facility as defined by Cal Recycle. And generally, again, this is designated safely accept disaster related waste. So the fire and ash debris is going to go to this facility, and it's designated as a facility that can accept those types of materials by Cal Recycle. Hopefully that's good. Anyone that wants to join in and clarify my clarification, I'd be happy to have them do so.
Yeah, and just to reiterate again, we don't accept any hazardous materials at our site. We're only accepting anything that the Corps has deemed fire debris and you know, just, and then one more thing, just to remind everybody, we have received fire debris from the Woolsey fire back in 2020. So this is, you know, this is something we've done before. We are familiar with receiving this material, and it is not hazardous material that we're accepting at our site.
Okay.
Again, we posted the 17 known locations that the Corps has identified that they want to take the materials. We posted it in the chat. It's pretty clear there which materials are going where. The Times article may have been a little bit off because at the time they asked me what were the known facilities, and we said there were 4 that we had suggested, but we didn't. I wasn't being specific about what type of materials would go to those facilities. So it was at the time, if you know, I corrected myself in a press conference later saying there are multiple facilities, and now we've identified, to date, we've identified 17 facilities that could be utilized for this purpose. Again, all of them certified by Cal Recycle for the materials that they receive.
Thank you for that. So for those wondering, the TLDR version of that, based on what I heard from both of you, is that hazardous material, hazardous waste, or what people are calling toxic waste, is not going to this landfill. That is correct? Understood. Perfect. Thank you.
Hazardous debris includes materials harmful to human health and the environment: batteries, pesticides, propane tanks, asbestos, siding, and paint. Those are not going to Calabasas landfill.
Thank you so much for that clarification. I know a lot of people were asking that. We have
Okay.
another question that said, will there be notes available to us from this presentation? Even better, this is actually going to be on our YouTube channel. It's streaming live there right now. So you can go back and watch that. It's at Supervisor Lindsay P. Horvath's YouTube channel. So you can go back and watch this and skip through it and find answers to these questions on there. So you will have that available to you. The next question is, are you tracking air quality in Agora Hills? And that is for you, Dr. Davis. I think that you spoke about AQMD earlier, but if you could just touch on that again and where people can find that information, and whether, if you guys know if there's any concerns to the air quality in Agora Hills right now.
At this very moment, the air quality is good. When you go to the AQMD's website, you can look up current hourly AQI index map. On that map, you can actually put in your address, the city, whatever, and it'll show you exactly what the air quality is. You can also sign up for air quality alerts from their website, and they do have an app that you can download on your phone to also see what the air quality is for various areas. I do want to say, remember that air quality does change from time to time. It can change hour by hour. It can change related to the weather and different activities. So it is something that you can constantly take a look at, or regularly take a look at, to see what it currently is. But to answer the question, currently it's good.
Perfect. Thank you so much. How much asbestos and other toxic materials are we breathing in the air right now, and how do we stay safe if so? I'm not sure exactly who that question goes to. I'm assuming it's going to be you, Doctor, but just let me know.
Yeah, I mean, I just answered it. So really, you're following the air quality index, and what that measures is a number of different things. One of the few things in there is the particulate matter. So if you're thinking that, you know, debris or other ash or there's soot, you know, from the wildfire that's being kicked up in the air, it's going to show up as particulate matter in general. I do want to say that air quality is a comprehensive measure. So air quality is also impacted by traffic and other things and how close you are to sources of pollution. But in either case, that's what's good about having the air quality index for your area and being able to see that. that is generally a good measure in terms of what's going on with pollution in your area.
Thank you so much. And I myself live in Woodland Hills. I check the AQI every morning, and I just as a matter of best practice since COVID, I have a air purifier in my home. So if that's something folks are concerned about, you should probably buy one of those regardless of where you live. And make sure on days where the AQI is high, you should probably close your windows and use one of those, I would assume. Would that be?
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
general practice in terms of thinking about it, especially if you're more sensitive to air pollution, whether you have underlying health conditions, et cetera. And so, along with the air quality index, there are recommendations based on the air quality, which is generally listed as good to unhealthy, to really bad, to paraphrase. And they do note activities to consider limiting, depending on the air quality index itself. So it's a good measure to use, and actions are listed to follow based on what you see outside.
Thank you for that. And follow up to that, are there things not included in the AQI that we should be concerned about? Someone asked.
Generally, that's what AQMD is doing to try to assess, especially in the fire impacted areas. I will say that in general, the highest risk is during the fire, when things are being produced and kicked up in the air. That's not only gases from the combustion, but also particulate matter. If you think about the tailpipe of a car, a gas car, all of that black dust that's on the outside, that's soot. And so those things getting kicked up into the air are generally going to happen mostly during the fire. It does can maintain in the air for days or week afterwards. But remember, what we also went through was heavy winds that pushed a lot in different places and cleared up a lot. And now we've gone through rain, so that's pushed a lot down into the storm drains. Sorry, Director Pastrella, I know you guys have to deal with that as well. But air quality does change in that regard. And AQMD is also, as I mentioned, has done for volatile organic compounds as well. And there'll be more done related to that. So more to come in terms of those assessments.
Thank you so much. Gonna touch on this question real quick. Are the words hazardous and toxic being used interchangeably? If not, can you please define them?
I think I'll start. I think we've been using it interchangeably. No specific difference between those, but others may chime in as well. I do want to say one other thing related to air quality. If you look at AQMD's website, they do note during the fire it was worse, and then since that time it's come back down to baseline or what it was before the fire. So just an FYI.
Yeah, we have been using them interchangeably, but my understanding, and I know Dr. Davis can correct me on this too, or give me clarification on this too, is one way I think about toxicity or toxic materials is that anything can be toxic to us. It just depends on the amount of it that we're actually ingesting or being exposed to. For that matter, you could drink too much water and have it become toxic to you or to animal life. So there's a certain amount of this material you can be exposed to and not have a toxicity level. And this is what we're often trying to judge in our environment, not only in these situations, but as was mentioned a second ago, in our water pollution. And so I think, EPA has been cautioning us to be a little careful about the use of the term toxic, because it may evoke concerns or unrealistic concerns about the materials. They are hazardous. We know that, and they're labeled hazardous materials. That's the labeling on these containers. And that, again, toxicity, in my understanding of it, is where we are exposed to materials or ingest materials to a level that they become toxic to us as humans or as animals. And I'm going to turn back to the real doctor for that.
Well, there's the technical terms, and I think that's what Director Purcell is talking about. I think for the public, when we're generally talking about toxic or hazardous, it can cause harm, and there are some steps to take in order to reduce your risk of harm from that. And that's generally what we put out in terms of guidance. Those steps are generally what are being taken in terms of dealing with debris. Those steps are generally what are taken in terms of the landfill and monitoring and taking action to mitigate or reduce the potential risk, to the public. So just for layman's terms, we're just talking about something that has the potential to cause harm, and for which action should be taken. And we try to give guidance and take steps in order to reduce that risk.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I just want to really quick before we move on to our next question, because I know we are short on time right now. I think that we need to hear clearly, and hearing this from community leaders and folks in Calabasas just really quick. I know that we went over this, but I just want us to be able to reiterate to the residents of Calabasas that toxic/hazardous debris will not be going to this landfill. Can we just get a short answer, Director Pastrella and Gwen? Can we just get a short, basic answer to that really quick?
Okay. The Calabasas landfill is a Class 3 facility. Is designated except disaster-related waste, which is burned residential debris after hazardous material is removed. And then I previously said hazardous debris includes materials harmful to human health and the environment, such as batteries, pesticides, propane tanks, asbestos, siding, and paint. Those materials will not be going to Calabasas landfill.
Okay.
Disaster-related debris consists again of burned residential debris after hazardous materials have been removed. Those materials will be going to Calabasas landfill.
Okay, so those deemed hazardous or toxic waste, as you just defined, will not be going to Calabasas.
That's correct.
Correct. Perfect. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Um, Real quick, we have this question. I know we are out of time, but what is the protocol for schools when there's an AQI warning? Is public health working with schools to follow that?
The state has put out guidance related to AQI and school activity. And I believe that's, through also the Department of Education. And it does talk about, when certain things are happening with AQI, depending on the level. It mirrors what's put out for the public in terms of who should potentially reduce activity outdoors and consider, activities to reduce risk for kids. And that guidance has already been created and is already out there. And I presume that most schools know about it because it's been around for a long time.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Since we're out of time, I just want to go to each of you now and just ask, what is the best way for folks to contact you, your departments, and can you please give contact information for folks? And we'll start with you, Director. And if you're speaking, I think you're.
Yeah, I got you. Our website is Public Works at dpw.lacounty.gov. You can get us there on the web. For this subject matter specifically, you can go to recovery.lacounty.gov, where you get the most specific information regarding our debris removal program, which what our discussion was about today. And then at any time that you have anything happening that you're concerned about with respect to infrastructure or this incident that we're talking about today, you can call our dispatch number at 1-800-675-4357.
Perfect. Dr. Davis, we'll go to you next.
I think at the moment, the best connection I can put is DPH -connect at ph.lacounty.gov. Again, DPH-connect at ph.lacounty.gov.
Perfect. Gwen?
So the best way, we have posted in the chat already. It does, it's our main website, lacsd.org, and then there's a bunch of other backslashes. So if you just go into the chat, it's posted there, has our general information about the operation hours, the fees, and what we will accept and what we don't accept. So just go into the chat if you would.
Perfect. And Colonel Saucer.
Yeah, it looks like we're starting to wrap up here. So I'd just like to say I appreciate the opportunity to join this forum today, and I look forward to future opportunities to participate in Calabasas' town hall. We will certainly make the time. I did post a number and an email. Unfortunately, I posted it to hosts and panelists, so I'd ask someone smarter than me if they can grab that from the hosts and panelists and get it to everybody. That'd be fantastic. But we do have a hotline as well, 231-308-8305. And there's also an associated email there. And so I just asked the Supervisor Horvath's team if you can help me out and post that for everybody. I'd appreciate it rather than go through all the @ symbols and dots. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And then I just want to thank everyone who joined us today on this call. I hope it was helpful. It will be posted to our YouTube channel as well, so you can watch it. I want to thank all of our panelists for joining us today. If you do have any needs that are county related or just community related in general, you're always welcome to reach out to our West Valley Mountain Communities office right here in Calabasas. Our phone number is in the chat. It's 818-880-9416, and you can email us at thirddistrict@bos.lacounty.gov. Thank you all so much. We appreciate it, and we look forward to further engaging on this. Have a good night. Everyone stay safe.
Thank you.